Okay friends, let's make our way underneath the front of the car. All along this area, there should potentially be a plastic splash shield. Generally for the splash shield, you might find several bolts or even some push clips. Ours is missing. Go ahead and remove it. Now once you have the shield out of the way, the next thing you're going to want to do is make your way over to the driver's side lower part of the radiator. That's where you're going to find the drain or the petcock. Now when you're doing the fan, you're actually going to have to remove the upper radiator hose, so you want to make sure you drain some coolant so you don't make a big old mess. We just come right over here, turn this counterclockwise, and make sure you drain it into a nice collection receptacle. To drain this, I'm going to make sure that I put a hose on it. You can also use a funnel or whatever you might happen to have. Essentially, I just want to make sure that I do direct the fluid into the proper receptacle. Now we can carefully grab onto the petcock. Generally, you can turn this by hand. If it does not turn by hand, carefully grab some pliers. We'll let that drain into our collection receptacle. Now that we've let that drain, we'll go ahead and close off our drain here. We'll look right up here in the center. This bolt should be a 10mm. If it looks like it's stripped out like ours, I'm just going to use a twisty socket. I'll remove it and then I'll replace the bolt when I go to reinstall. Now that we have the bolt off of there, you should be able to wiggle this around. Now let's make our way up along the rear of the fan shroud. You're going to find that you have a single electrical connector. Squeeze that tab and remove the electrical connector. Once you have it off, make sure you check it for corrosion. To get the connector off of here, typically you're going to want to use two tools. I'll use a pick and carefully get in between where the squeeze tab is. Gently squeeze on that tab with my pick, and then I'll continue by prying it off with a short pry bar. Now that we have the wiring off of the cooling fan, let's move over to the area where it's mounted to the assembly. We'll just gently pry it out of its locked-in position. Let's make our way back up top. We're going to start removing our front grille assembly. Commonly, for the grille, you're going to find that you have 3 push clips. Generally, for push clips, you just try to get underneath the center aspect, pop up the center, which will unlock it, then you can lift up the rest of it. We'll set those aside because we will be reusing them. Carefully remove your grille assembly and set that aside. Now we're going to start taking off this upper support bracket. For this, you're going to find that you have the hood latch attached to it. We need to remove the hood latch from the area. To get this off of here, we're going to remove a few 10mm headed bolts. We'll take that and slide it aside. Let's continue removing this. We'll start right in the very bottom of the center. Remove this 10mm headed bolt, and then we'll move along each side. Now we'll do the same on the other side. Now let's move along to this area. You've got your upper radiator hose that leads directly to the radiator. Squeeze the clamp, slide it up, remove the hose from the radiator. Now, as far as removing the bumper cover, as I had mentioned, there should be a shield that comes across this entire area, which would have other miscellaneous hardware potentially held in place to the bumper cover. You, of course, want to remove all that. As we do, we'll also make our way along to each side. Now, once you have that off of there, on each corner, looking up into the bumper cover, you're going to find the fog lamp assemblies. Carefully grab onto the wiring harness for that and turn it counterclockwise. Remove the bulb from the fog lamp assembly and give it a quick inspection. Make sure it doesn't look burnt or damaged in any way. Assuming it looks good, carefully set it aside, making sure that you're not going to cause it any damage. At this point, do the exact same thing on the other side of the bumper cover. Make your way into each of the wheel wells. You're going to be removing the lower 10mm bolt from each side. Carefully separate that. You'll notice that you should have two 10mm headed bolts, one on either side. Ours has one that's broken. And then in the center, there should be a push clip of some sort. Carefully grab this last push clip out of here. Now that we have this removed, it's going to be time to carefully remove the bumper cover from the vehicle. Just give it a little wiggle and carefully pull it away. Now, with the bumper cover out of the way, let's move along to this plastic area. It should have two push clips that hold it to the support. Just go ahead and grab that inner aspect, pull it out, and then remove the entire thing. There should be one over there. Ours is missing. Go ahead and break that free. Now we can remove this plastic area. Now let's make our way to where the horn mounts onto the support beam. We'll use our 12mm to remove this mounting bolt. Now we'll just hang the horn aside, putting no pressure on our wire. Let's move along to removing the top AC condenser mounting bolts. We'll use a 10mm for these. Now we can finish removing the rest of the bolts that holds our support bracket in place. We'll use a 10mm. Remove the support bracket. Now the next thing we're going to do is move right up to this area. We'll grab this, slide it off. Now that we have that off of there, the next thing you want to do is move along to this area. If you were to reach along the back side, right along where the engine is, you're going to find two 10mm headed bolts. Go ahead and remove the pair. Go ahead and set this part aside. Now at this point, we're going to continue on to removing our two upper fan bolts. Use a 10mm for these as well. Now let's get this one off of here as well. Now we can carefully pull the radiator aside, remove the fan assembly. Now let's have a look at the original fan. We're going to continue by removing the overflow hose. Our clamp down here is in very poor condition. I'll cut that off. Now once you have the hose off of there, just give it a quick inspection. Make sure it's still soft and pliable and it's not torn, worn, or damaged in any way. We'll put this on the new fan assembly and then we'll just go ahead and hold it in place with a wire tie. Let's get our fan installed in the vehicle. Carefully slide it down along the rear of the radiator. As we slide it down, you want to be extremely careful not to damage that radiator. Should want to slide right in there. Line up your bolt holes along the top and along the bottom. Now in your kit for the radiator, you're going to find that it came with a whole bunch of these square looking nuts. Go ahead and slide one of them in each of the upper mounting holes here. With both of these started, we can snug them up. Make sure that's nice and tight. Now I wrapped a wire tie around this. I'll slide it right into position as far up against the fan assembly as possible. Now I'm going to make my wire tie as tight as possible and trim off the excess. Now we can run it along the proper placement on our fan assembly. And then this is just going to come right over to that upper radiator hose assembly. Now we're going to take this and we'll put it in position in the vehicle. Goes up around the backside there. Once again, just make sure those rubber grommets are in place as needed. Now we can start putting in our cross member. As we're doing it, pay attention to your rubber bushings along the top of the radiator assembly. Let's press the bolts for our AC condenser into place as well. Once you're sure you have all that in place, continue on putting in your mounting bolts. All right, let's snug them up. Now we can snug these as well. Now we can start resecuring the plastic along the passenger side of the radiator assembly. I'll put in both of my push clips and lock them down. Now we can start reconnecting our horn. We'll just put it in place, start in our mounting bolt, and snug it up. Now we can put on the protective plastic. Looking at the back side of the plastic, you're going to find that you have several little push tabs. Line them up with their corresponding holes and slide it into place. Now we can slide our upper radiator hose into position. Slide it in as far as you can against the radiator and tighten the clamp as needed. Make sure that's tightened to the radiator. Now we can start resecuring the bracket for this as well. Now that they're both started, I'll snug them up. Reconnect your overflow hose. We can put on our upper bracket here. Rest it in place, start in all of your mounting bolts before you tighten any of them. Should be one up there. Let's get our hood latch in place. Start in all of your mounting bolts and then snug them up. All right, now we can follow that cable, grab onto its little mount here, and then we're going to put it into its mounting hole. So I'll just reach up on the inside and press it up and in. Listen for a click, give it a nice tug to make sure it's secured in there and it's not going to fall out. Let's make sure we put this little nut inside the bottom of the radiator here, where the lower mounting point is for the fan shroud. Let's hold that up there. Should slide right in. Let's start in that mounting bolt by hand and snug it up. Make sure your fan is secured to the radiator. Let's reconnect our cooling fan. Come right over here, we'll plug it into the motor. Listen for a click, give it a tug to make sure it's secure. Speaking of secure, you also want to make sure that you remount the wire into the fan shroud. Make sure that's secure. Let's carefully slide our bumper cover back into place. Once you have the center in place, continue on with your push tab and start in both of your mounting bolts. Same for over here. All right, now let's snug them up. Now we're going to make our way to each of the corners. Along the bottom of the headlight assembly, near the fender, you're going to find a little ridge. And on the bumper cover, you're going to have an area that slides into that ridge. Go ahead and carefully tug on the bumper cover just enough to slide it over the ridge and press it into place. Now let's make our way down along the corner. We'll get that in place as well. Let's reconnect in our fog lamp bulbs. Make sure it's secure. Now we can make our way down along the bottom of the bumper here. We'll continue by sliding everything in place as needed. Now obviously you want to make sure you do the exact same thing on the other side of the vehicle and then make your way all the way across the front. As I told you before, a lot of our skid plates were already missing, so I can't show you how to put them back up. Let's get our grill on here. Once you have it pressed down into place, continue on by lining up your mounting holes and then insert your push clips. Now we're going to start filling the coolant. It's important to make sure you use either a vacuum of some sort or even use a funnel. Either way, we need to make sure that we fill it with the proper coolant and make sure we burp out any air that might be in the system. Okay, so now at this point, I've got plenty of coolant inside my filling funnel here. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and hop inside the vehicle. I'm going to start it up and let it run for a little while. While it's running, I'll make sure that I have the heat in the hot position and I have the blower motor running at the same time. I want to continue feeling, making sure that I have heat coming out of all my vents. At the same time, make your way out here and just double check to make sure you have plenty of coolant along the way. Once it seems as though it stops burping out any air from inside your funnel, you should be good to go. Now let's make our way over to the overflow. You want to make sure you have plenty of coolant in there. Generally, approximately halfway up should be good enough. You want to make sure you have plenty of space along the top that's still air, just in case the coolant expands once it heats up. It'll have a place to go. I'll use a funnel, put it right in here, and I'll add some coolant. There we are, approximately halfway up. Now that looks good, go ahead and close it up. Now it's time to put on the radiator cap. Make sure it's secure. Okay friends, we finished installing our cooling fan. At this point, you just want to go ahead and run the vehicle for a little while. Make sure that the cooling fan operates as it should. Aside from that, take it for a road test. Thanks for watching.